this is kind of where I left off yesterday. So our grand theories, we still have these major like categories of theories, but these are a little bit newer, right? So social learning theory is just the way it sounds. It's you learning in the part of society. Have you ever like not known where you're supposed to go or what to do? Maybe it was your first day of school, or you were at like a different, like you went to a concert at a new place and you didn't know where it was, and you're like just watching other people. Like what's everybody else doing? Yeah, you do it, I do it, we all do it, right? Like even in the classroom, when like a loud noise happens, everybody like looks at me. What is she doing? Social referencing to see like what do we do, right? Like have you ever heard a loud noise and you look at somebody, you're like, how do we handle this? So again, or same thing with like fashion and choices, right? I see everybody else going like, so I need to do that, right? Or maybe not, right? So again, social learning theory just says that we learn in the context of our society. And if we can get to it, I'll show some videos on it too. So again, this is another way of looking at it. Again, you can use a grid for your theory, but classical conditioning, we learn this plus this, put those two things together, right? Okay, and those make a new set of knowledge. So again, it can be two things that are unrelated, but we can put those things together. Okay, the operant conditioning means learning occurs through reinforcement. If you have a coach and you're like, you know, on the soccer team and your coach never says, yeah, hustle, hustle, good job, nice D, nice defense. If your coach never says that, you're not going to know if you're doing a good job. So you get that constant reinforcement, and reinforcement can be bad too. We'll talk about that later. Social learning is more of modeling. I'm going to do what other people do. And it's okay to be an individual, but there's a piece of conformity that we all tend to follow a little bit. I mean, driving on the right side of the road is a safety issue, right? Not every road has a concrete divider, and people can still jump over that divider in their car, right? But we put a lot of trust in social learning that we're all kind of doing what we're kind of supposed to do, what other people doing. A whole issue with those masks, right? A lot of people wear them, a lot of people are boycotting them, it's whatever. But is this a place where I need to wear it? In the state of California, it's a yes. Another one of the grand theories, a little bit newer, this is Jean Piaget. He was a little Belgian man. He's like your little grandpa. He said to watch the children, right? So like an old man sitting in a park watching kids wouldn't be so welcome today, but back in the day, it was kind of okay. He literally, his number one idea was that cognitive development. Now, not our emotions, not our sexual desires, but just our thinking. How do children think? How do people think? And by the way, his theory was used in the Inside Out movie, the Disney Inside Out movie. They don't say it. They don't come out and say this is Piaget, but their processes of cognitive development of the main character, Riley, her processes followed Jean Piaget's model. Yeah, so just how you think and how you store memories and whatnot, and we'll talk more about that. So when we talk about thinking and cognition, this is the guy. Okay. Piaget, yeah, you talk about this. These are his stages. You can write them down now, but we will talk about every single one of these. Super easy. Here's the overview. When little babies are born, they don't have a lot of ability to interact with the world. They can't walk, they can't talk, they can't point, they can't grab. They're just these little blobs, right? So all they do is sense things and move. That's it. Sensory motor, right? So they're basically just sitting there, just move, right? They're just waiting for people to pick them up and move them and wipe them and feed them and everything. Infants do nothing for themselves. We do everything for them. But even touching something, like, you know, when babies are maybe like a month old or whatever, and they reach out and they grab your hair, right? Or something, or they're holding a toy, just touching a toy that was like, let's say if I had a toy that was like smooth, it was something like this, and it moved, and they're just touching it like this, what would they do to it? It goes right in their mouth, everything. That's how they actually learn about this toy. What would I learn about this toy if I put it in my mouth? Smooth, it moves, it might have a flavor, it might, you know, there's a piece of metal. I mean, I obviously wouldn't give this to a child, but versus this, they would put this in their mouth, and what would they learn? It was crunchy and dry, and I actually put some smells on it, so it smells good. So they learn two different things from interacting with two different things. They move and they sense things, literally through their touch, their hands and their mouth. They suck their thumb, they suck their toe, right? So sensory motor, infants, super easy. And pre-operational is, again, not operational like you're operating on a body, but being logical, doing things in order, doing the order of operations. Pre-operational just means the little preschoolers. You know how preschoolers are a little bit, they make up stories, or it sounds like a lie, but they're just like, yeah, I totally like went to school today and then there was like an elephant in a fire truck and they were totally there and I totally rode them and then the elephant told me that I could use their balloon. Like they come up with stuff just like, yes. Pre-operational means totally illogical in a good way, because they're literally pushing out the confines of their brain to learn new things, right? And as reality sets in, reality takes over, right? And then it becomes concrete. So now you get kids that are older in maybe like 5th grade and 6th grade and are stuck on the rules, right? You guys remember trying to play Foursquare or handball at school? And it was like, the linesies are in, or the linesies are out, and I'm telling, and you know, my nephew at this age, I said, you did a stupendous job on that. He goes, I'm telling you, said stupid. So it's just like, it just cracks me up. They go from like totally illogical to like this crazy, like you're not following the rules. Then when you get into high school, thinking of like formal, like winter formal, and like you wear a bow tie or whatever, that's when you start learning the rules of like science and abstract and integrity, things that are like way out there, again, in that movie. We'll talk more about that. And each chapter as we go down, we'll go down the rabbit hole, but in a good way, in a good way. Let's go down. Now, Piaget talked about, I won't talk all about this right now, but these are some of the terms that Piaget talks about: assimilation, accommodation, and equilibrium. This is the difference between new experiences and comparing them in your brain to old experiences, adapting them. When, like in this class, like some of the stuff may be new to you and you kind of feel like your brain's like actually working to kind of get new things in there. And you kind of compare it and contrast it with stuff you know, and then you kind of fit it in and then you move on, right? That period of not knowing all of it and figuring it out is called disequilibrium, right? And that's actually when we learn the best, when our brain is challenged. This whole top of our brain, this cortex, this big part right here processes most of the information. And kids, when they're little, they're constantly doing it. When we're older, we might have less new information. But think of it this way: you came to college, and let's say maybe you went to a different college last year, or 5 years ago, 10 years, it doesn't matter, right? Now you come to this college and it's similar, but it's different, right? So now you got to take the stuff that you know and you have to adapt the new stuff that you got and put it against what you know, right? And be like, oh, okay, so when I was in that class, and that school we used Blackboard, in this school we used Canvas, and it's similar, but you're kind of comparing and contrasting until it makes more sense. Or think of it this way: each professor does it differently. Each professor has a different syllabus. Oh, I've seen a syllabus before, but this syllabus looks like this. Or I've seen a Canvas before, but this Canvas looks a little different. Like each professor sets it up. This is the way your brain is. Like week 1, you're in disequilibrium. True. Week 2, still a little bit. By week 8, you guys got it. It's actually kind of tedious, habituated, boring, right? But when it's new, it's kind of firing off and trying to make sense of all that. So I give everybody a few weeks to get into equilibrium, a new equilibrium. Make sense? Kids are in this cycle constantly. And we'll talk more about that as we go. Cool. Yeah. So just, again, Piaget is just thinking about our thinking. Cool. So again, this isn't a good example of what Piaget looks like at different ages and stages. When you have a child and they're itty bitty, look at it. You have a child who's like putting the flower in their mouth, right? Or take a child this age and take him to the beach, sand in the mouth constantly. Don't do that, like constantly. They're just trying to figure stuff out, and they might like it, may feel good, may taste good, you're just like, bleh. Right? But that's how they learn, right? So this child is literally physically sensory motor interacting with the flower. Yeah. Smelling it, tasting it. Yeah. Now, when you get into pre-operational, right? This kid is saying, oh, okay, I'm going to water these plants because that's part of the rules. That's what we do. We're just learning the rules. But you may have told them, okay, that plant doesn't well, I watered it this morning, you don't need any more. Oh, but we have to do it. They're illogical a little bit, but they have some logic in there. It's really sweet. They're more independent. And then, hold on, let me go back. And then even in this stage here, you could start talking about what is water, H2O, and what is the H and what is the 2 and what is the O, right? And what does water do? What does water doesn't do? You talk about, you know, the rivers and the lakes and the water, the evaporation cycle. They start getting more scientific. And then in the adulthood, you could be like, okay, I need water to sustain my business or my hobby. But now when you're an adult, you're like, excuse me, I need like mineral water or like Voss Still or whatever. Like you can start to see the difference, the abstracts about different waters. Yeah, right. So it's one constant thing that it's the same. It's like the same, it's the same material, but your brain processes it differently. Flowers for this little one is like, I'm going to eat it. Flowers for this guy is like, I got to water it. Flowers for her, she's like, oh, I want a business or I have a hobby. Isn't that interesting? So Piaget is not wrong. However, we will talk about limitations of Piaget because again, all these scientists, they didn't have social media. And what does social media do to our thinking? All these scientists never met anybody with autism. How would their theory be different if they met somebody with autism? Yeah, so really interesting stuff that I want you guys to think about. One of the newer theories, information processing theory, very simple. In fact, it's so simple, a lot of people forget about it. I'll ask you about your theories and people kind of skip this one. Information processing. Let's look at information as information into your brain and information out of your brain. There's different parts of your brain that store the logic or the information and different parts of the brain that recall it. Now, again, you're going to hear this comparison. Information processing like a computer. You guys do know like YouTube is getting thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of uploads every minute, right? And YouTube just has it sitting there waiting for you guys to go access it, right? Same with our brain. We get new information in and we're constantly processing. Even the stuff with the COVID, it's always changing. We're learning about this, we're learning about that, right? You're constantly getting this part of it. Do you hold all of it in? Maybe yes, maybe no. Some of us are better with long-term memory, some are not. And then how do you recall it? Now we do have short-term, mid-term, and long-term memory. We'll talk more about that. Again, I will show that movie, or I'll give you guys that as an extra credit to do the Inside Out to watch that movie. Newer cognitive theories talks about our actual brain chemistry. This is what a brain cell looks like, a neuron. We have billions of them in our brain. And some of the newer theories talk about if you don't use it, you lose it, right? Like language development. It's best to teach a second language when a child's like 5 or under. And when are we learning it? When we're 15 in high school? It's ridiculous. So newer cognitive theories like information processing will actually talk about brain scans and things like that. And I like to learn about that stuff. I have a bunch of, look at this. This is not required for the class, but I do supplement with this. I don't require you guys to buy it, but this is a big deal. Big deal. How the brain learns. Why are you in college if you don't know how your brain learns? Again, why we do stuff in the first week. Yeah. Now, Piaget and neuroscience, I'm not going to kind of go down this all the way, but just know that with brain scans, they can show hot spots in the brain. They can show about spots that are working, spots that aren't working when you're learning new information or when you're not learning new information, or when you're trying to recall or you're trying to recall a memory. Different parts of the brain do different things. Really, really cool. Okay. So again, I'm not going to like force you to know all these things like the EEG and the ERP and the MRI and the fMRI and the PET, right? So just know that I do use my son as an example for a lot of things. We just had in December, he just had an fMRI. So because he's adopted and he was drug exposed, we still don't know what's really going on in his brain. And we do have a lot of information based on his reactions to medicine and whatnot. But he had a really interesting spike of behavior in the fall. It was most likely hormones. He was 12. He's now 13.5. Anyway, so he had like a change in temperament, really sharply change in temperament. And because we don't know a lot about his history, I was able to get the fMRI for him. It was fine. He did it. It was just to look. That one particular test only looks for brain tumors, and so I just want to make sure if that was there, we can Since then, we did find out that one of his brothers had a stroke. So he most likely will probably get a different one of these brain scans in the next 6 months. It probably will be the spectroscopy. I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor, but the one where the colors are is a pretty significant brain scan, and it kind of will identify the parts of his brain that we kind of already know that aren't fully developed because he was, born at 3 pounds and drug exposed in this whole business. The last thing to develop is right here, and this is the regulation and the emotions and the organization. It's called executive function. We'll talk a lot about that. But I will definitely share with you guys if we get more of this information. There's places in Orange County where you can do a brain scan if you have the cash and just go for it, very, very interesting. And then they give you like a huge response. They give you like a huge binder of all these pictures. Really, really cool. So we'll talk more about that. But again, theories are sometimes not based about the brain, and like Piaget just observed people, and then sometimes now we're like, oh, okay, so Piaget, had he had these scans back in the day, he would have learned the same thing. He would have learned similar things or the same things, or he would have corroborated with science just his observations. Newer versions of cognitive therapy, again, cognition means, think of the cogs of the wheels in there. Cognition is here. Emotions are here, right? And so you might hear me say psychosocial is our emotions. We'll talk more about this. I'll talk about it a lot. But cognitive is, again, our thinking. And again, there's this whole thought of like, we get smarter as we get older as a society because we have to, right? We were maybe very simplistic as cave people, but now we have to have the language of computers, right? We have to know technology. Or not, right? And we'll talk more about that as well. Now, Vygotsky, he was a little bit newer, right? So about the same time that, Freud was developing his theory, but Vygotsky said, hey, wait a minute. What about your family and your culture? How many times do you make choices or behaviors based on what your family, or like our family does it this way, or our culture does it this way, or don't you do that because your grandma wouldn't like that, right? So Vygotsky was not wrong. Plus, he was born in a different country, and when he came here, he saw the effect of the influences on a family in his mother country and the influences of a family here. And it wasn't that it was that different, but as in America, we have a different way of doing things. Even when it was a long time ago and people were just coming over and just starting to immigrate, he could see that culture is a crucial part of development. Now, I don't even just mean culture as like your heritage, your culture, but the sphere of influence around you. Your culture is a college student. Doesn't matter if you're young or old, you are in the culture of learning, right? And so a lot of times that has its own effect. And then the other culture of your home. What about the culture of your best friend's home, right? My best friend's parents just had their 50th wedding anniversary, and they're like, they are kind of like, when I was in college, they were kind of like my parents. And so it's really cool to see how different families do different things and how that affects how people do things. Yeah. Right. So again, this culture also supports education. So maybe you're the first in your family to come to college. Maybe you're not. Maybe college is demanded of you, right? And you didn't want to come, but you came anyway. Or you start coming to college and people go, who the hell do you think you are? Because you think you're so smart. I've heard it both ways, right? So just know that Vygotsky really looked at that cultural piece and how it affects. He came up with the circle. This is one of the diagrams, and this circle, his circle is called the ZPD. Very important. We will talk a lot about this. I actually provide this zone, this scaffolding, this theory. I'm providing it to you right now. Yeah. So the zone of proximal development, I think of it backwards. And by the way, I had to present on this topic to get this job. So do you think I know this stuff? You bet your butt, right? I did a Prezi, presented to the dean, presented to all these different people. So they're like, wow, I never saw it that way. I was like, think of it backwards, developing in proximal zones, right? So how somebody develops inside of a zone, inside of a bubble, right? We don't let our 2-year-olds go run up and down the street, right? Every piece of influence happens inside the bubble of that 2-year-old's world, right? And yeah, we do take them out from time to time, go to the park or go to Target or whatever, right? But there's this piece where kids can do things on their own. And I don't just mean kids, I mean anybody, right? The last time you learned something new, you were childlike learning something new. Do you remember getting a brand new phone and you're like, I know how to use a phone, but this one's a little bit different. Okay. How about your parents and their phone, or your grandparents and their phone? They're older than you, but they are still new to that particular topic and they need some support, right? So this part in the middle, let me annotate here. The part in the middle basically says it's what the person can do on their own, right? They can do it on their own. So like when a kid is learning how to tie their shoes, sometimes they're terrible at it, right? And so you help them, and this is called the scaffolding in between this zone right here. It's what the learner can do when you help them, right? So maybe they can't do all of the tie of the shoe, but they do part of it and you do part of it and then they finish it out. So you're providing a little bit of guidance, like training wheels. Yeah, makes sense? And then way out here's the stuff that they can't do, right? So maybe they can't do macrame and they can't do all these fancy like sailor knots, but they're in between here, they're learning how to tie their shoe with help, right? Again, here's the thing. If you don't help them and you do it for them all the time, they will never learn how to do it on their own. So the ZPD is very, very applicable to not just little kids mostly, but anybody who's new, right? Have you ever had to take a family member to the doctor? It's a new doctor or a new dentist and they'd never been there before, or the DMV or the post office or right? So you're guiding somebody who might be new to something, but you help them. So Vygotsky, yes, Sam had a question. Vygotsky has to do with skills. So it has to really he talks about a mentor, somebody who has more skills and somebody who has less skills. So a child could have less skills than you, but guess what? My kid in the neighbor next door knows all kinds of stuff about computers that I might not know. I'm pretty good, but like they know extra stuff, right? So maybe they're teaching me. So like my kid uses Flipgrid at school and I know about Flipgrid, but I've never used it before. So he had to show me how to use it. Yeah. So it has nothing to do with age. It has to do with somebody who has more skills and less skills. And that person's kind of guiding, right? It's called scaffolding. We'll talk way more about this, but make sure that you know the ZPD, right? And think about this bubble moves around all the time. This bubble, it could be when you are learning how to do, like when you go to Target and instead of doing the checkout where they check it out for you, you had to do the self scanner. And it's about the same, but it's a little bit different. And then sometimes they walk over and kind of walk you through it, right? Or it could be like applying for college. It could be filling out any sort of form. It could be doing your own taxes for the first time. So again, having somebody who doesn't do it for you, but helps you along the way, it's called scaffolding. And that's your mentor, the more sophisticated person or more knowledgeable person helping the less knowledgeable person. Has nothing to do with age. Just somebody who knows more and somebody who knows less. Make sense? This is easy stuff. You guys got this. Trust me. You do it every day and people do it to you. Yeah, absolutely. And Vygotsky just put a name and a diagram to it. Like you guys are doing this week. How are we doing? It is 11:45. We're going to stop there. I want to be very respectful of your time. The things that aren't finished up in here, I will try to get to. Evolutionary theory. I do love talking about. I love talking about Darwin. Darwin is awesome. So I'll try to put up a separate little video about Darwin because he's not wrong either. And even though he feels like he's like an old guy from a long time ago, his stuff really, really applies. Really, really applies. We are all going through an evolutionary process right now because of COVID. Darwin was correct. Oof. And Darwin also said it's not the strongest of the species that will survive, and not the smartest either. It's the one who's most able to adapt. COVID in a nutshell. Not the strongest, not the smartest, but the people who are able to adapt. Think about it. Okay, you guys are welcome to go. It's past class time, but again, you're welcome to stay. I'm here to answer any questions. Definitely here to support you. I'll be on off and on for the rest of the day. And always just email me in Canvas if you have a question. If it's something funky, and I did write down here that I gotta look at those slides. Make sure, I gotta probably pull them out and reload them. I'll put the recordings in as well, and make sure that they're under the module, under the chapter that they belong to. Cool? All right. Any questions? Just unmute yourself and jump on in. Chat says, thanks so much. Bye, Karen. Good to see you. Ashley, questions? What else do we got? We got the chat room. Have a good day. I will. You guys do too. It's great to see you.
Can I just like add something of what you said today?
For sure, for sure.
When my brother was like, when he was born, like he was like a couple weeks old, and whenever we would feed him a bottle, he had this habit of touching our ears as he eats.
Like, so when you're holding him, he's like on you.
Yeah, we'll feed him the bottle, and as he's eating, he'll have to touch our ear. We found that so strange because he could not. We'll like push it away. He'll cry, so we'll let him rub on our ear. But we found that such a weird thing because none of us did that as babies, but him.
Okay, so
He
now that
had
I
to.
talked about it, what do you think? What do you think that's all about?
I feel like in a way that felt for him like a kind of connection to us
Of
because
course.
like he
Yes.
felt so like every time we would play with him, we'll like reject it, he would get so like sad. So like we'll like, or he'll love those toys that it had like, it sounded like foil, like the,
Okay.
like I have to explain
So
it like.
we will talk more about this, but like again, PJ's first stage is sensory motor. You hear the word sensory. So everybody, I'm assuming everybody's earlobe's soft, right? There's nothing wrong with want to feel something soft, right? And so obviously,
Yeah.
if you're feeding a baby and that's kind of a very intimate moment, right? And it's kind of like if you and me were eating a brownie, like something like our favorite treat, and we're like, we got our little blankie, and we were like, right? It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Right? And maybe we just had other sensory stuff, right? And then with the foil, same thing. Maybe at that moment he wanted something crunchy and cold, and and we all have these sensory issues. Like if you've ever cut a tag out of your shirt because it was bugging you, you have sensory issues, right? If like I know that there's certain like paper towels. Have you ever been to like get the bathroom and there's like a paper towel and you're like, ooh, those are too rough, or they're not rough enough, or like maybe you can't have your food touch, or like things are too loud. Or for me, it's my nose. I'm very sensitive in my nose. When I'm smelling something that's kind of burnt, I get like a little crazy because I feel like my nose connects right to that little animal part of my brain where I'm like, oh my god, someone's gonna burn the house down. It's weird. I have sensory issues, and sometimes it's more a big deal. Sometimes like I skip it because whatever. But yeah, I have a friend also who has a child with autism, and that was his thing. We would just hang out with this kid. He hand dive his hand all the way. He was looking for cleavage. He was looking for all kinds of stuff, and it was really cute because it was like my friend who was like our first friend to have kids. And like now he's like 20 something years old, and yeah, he was like full on always like, and he would deep dive, man, in our shirts and be like, and it wasn't that he was looking for the boot. He was just looking for that soft, warm thing. And come on, we're animals. It's pretty normal. Pretty normal. He doesn't do it now in his 20s. I'm sure guys in their 20s might want that, but like little kids are just little kids, right? And they're just going.
Yeah.
So Dulcie asked, will we have access to the PowerPoint, or we have to wait for the next lecture? No, I'm going to make sure that the PowerPoints are good. And then this particular lecture, I'm going to load right into YouTube right now. It takes like an hour for it to upload. Ugh. And then I put the link back in. I just have to make sure it's closed captioned, and then I put the link back in. I'm trying to make everything as good as possible. You guys will have slides and have 2 links, maybe 3, to videos that match our actual chapter. I'm trying to be very intentional about it, because I think we can learn on our own, but I think a lot of people can't, maybe not right now, or would prefer not to, right? Some people love the online environment. Some people are like, no, I need as much human interaction as possible. So I'm trying to do that, but it takes some patience. So thank you. What else? Question? Kaya? Who else?
Yeah, oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. For the outline one, when is that going to be posted so we can put the homework in for that?
Outline 1 was last week. You don't have to submit outline 1.
Oh, we don't?
No. So
okay.
Week 1 was just the intro and the quiz. What was it? Do the intro stuff. Yeah, so I didn't want to pack you guys with intro stuff and the quiz and the outline, and like I made Week 1, super bare bones. We couldn't skip chapter 1, but you could have a
Mhm.
cheesy quiz, right?
Yeah.
But the outline, so again, the outline was for people who didn't have a book right away. And so the outline's a gift. You don't have to submit anything at all. There's no
Okay.
reason for me to give you an outline for you guys to resubmit it. That's just busy work. Come on now. Yeah.
Okay.
So chapter
Thank
2
you.
forward, yes, outline.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thanks. Good. Kaya, we'll see you next week. Oh, Tuesday. Yeah, so not Thursday. Yeah, I'll make sure everything's posted by Thursday. Parker, Molly, Rhiannon, Tanya.
Oh, so I had a question. So
Of course.
I know you probably like explained it on like the first Zoom, but like I've just finally like gotten situated. So what?
Wait. Let's double check. Week 2, still figuring it all out. It's okay.
So on like the deep dive journals and like the outlines, it says the lowest is dropped at the end of the semester. What does that mean?
I have a column that just gives you guys a bunch of points. So lowest quiz, 10 points. Lowest journal, 10 points. Lowest deep dive, 10 points.
Oh,
Lowest
okay.
outline, 5 points. Lowest discussion board, 10 points. So I'm giving you guys 35 points at the end of the semester. I just hammer it down one column and it'll say drop lowest and everybody gets 35 points at the end of the semester.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you skip the week,
Uh-huh.
you're covered. If you stayed in and you did
Oh,
every week, you get a couple extra points. Let's
got
say 1 week you did half of it. Well, that fills in those blanks. Let's say you jammed on all those assignments, but your tests kind of were a little iffy. That will kind of fill in those points too.
Gotcha. Okay.
We call it a low stakes retention tool.
Okay.
I have some people who like forget to do one and then they want to drop the whole class. No, life happens. Skip it or not skip it. The points are yours. They show up at the end. They help a little bit, but don't rely on them. I don't give you guys the points right away. I do it at the end, so just in case. It's a little bump up.
Okay. Okay. Thank you
Good
so
question.
much.
Yeah, good question. Parker, let's see who else we got. Answer my question through someone else's question. Perfect. All right. I will see you guys next week. Make sure you guys ask me any questions in the Canvas inbox. Good to see you. Coming late is totally fine. Okay. See you next time.